Good morning, everyone, and I'm very sort of honored to be invited to this seminar or workshop you are having today. And I just recently got to learn about this interesting project that you have had ongoing, and I got a very good overview in Anna's presentation about the results, and these practical recommendations in particular are something that I definitely want to have a closer look at. And so I have worked with the digital participation tools lately for a longer time with the participatory methods and so on. And now I will share some experiences in relation to an ongoing Green Place project. And let me see when I try to share my slides if this works well. Yes. You probably now see them.
Yes.
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 So indeed, I'm coming from the University of Turku, and I have a background in geography, so that is maybe something relevant to know. And in this presentation today, I wanted to start with highlighting something in relation to this smart city and digital developments. And we recently, with some colleagues, wrote an academic article where we try to argue about these different sensing systems, where we get data to our digital and smart cities, and how these could be used in a way that we actually direct urban development towards more inclusive and resilient and sustainable planning. And as we all know, these recent years have seen a very big development, like massive development of sensing systems that allow capturing and monitoring of human presence and action and even intention, and how the environment is changing and how our cities are changing. And we can categorize these into passive sensing and active sensing approaches. And this passive sensing refers to this fast wireless communication, cyber infrastructures, and IoT, Internet of Things, which is oftentimes done in real time. And here we talk about Earth observation technologies like satellites and geospatial social media data, mobile phone records of people's mobility or population density measures coming from statistics. And this passive sensing field is huge. It is actually been expected that 150 billion networked measuring sensors are expected to be installed in the next 10 years. And also in particular, this IoT is increasing heavily at the moment. But then we have this other side of what we call active sensing, which means that people voluntarily contribute to collecting geospatial data. This can be coming from surveys or public participation approaches or serious games, for example. And the aim with active sensing is that it supports consultation and engagement and empowerment of different stakeholders in planning, and that by including this active sensing data, we learn something valuable from our cities, and the individuals can be here the sensors or just being sensed. And in traditional urban planning systems, these two sensing systems are treated in isolation, like you see in the upper part of the figure here. So we have the active sensing and the passive sensing. I don't go into details here, but in this article we argue that they work across the practical and political and personal spheres that all affect these urban sustainability transformations. But rather what we should see, instead of this isolation, we should see a dynamic relationship between passive and active sensing, kind of a sensing loop, which would support knowledge co-creation processes and foster dialogues and promote social learning about how our cities should be transforming in future. And what are the risks in there. And this should be done in collaboration with scientists and planners and businesses and governments and citizens, of course. So this as a backdrop for what I will talk more in detail today. And and in particular, my focus will be on 3D visualizations, 3D virtual landscapes in supporting participation and collaboration in land use planning context. And these digital tools, and particularly 3D tools and approaches that can support participation and collaboration, have been also developing quite fast in the past decades in different fields, from engineering and very technical fields. Also, interest has been raised among landscape planning, for example. And we all know that for democratic planning processes, public participation and collaboration are essential requirements in most countries. And these 3D visualizations, when we bring these type of digital tools into planning, they are especially attractive because they have, or we assume that they have this capacity to support better participation. And then the question comes that do they actually work with lay people? Because we know that technological interfaces and devices and these kind of issues, they actually include also quite a lot of challenges. So how could these kind of 3D visualizations work with lay people? How credible they are, how salient, how legitimate, how realistic that and interactive, how immersive. So all kinds of aspects to think about. And there are studies of how useful 3D visualizations are among planners and professionals, but there has actually been less focus on how they have been used in and how they can support this participatory and collaborative planning. And with some researchers, colleagues, we have done a systematic literature review in these topics recently. And more specifically, the work that I talk about today relates to a project called Green Place, funded by the Academy of Finland. And I'm running this project, which is for 5 years, and the main focus of it is the well-being benefits of urban green infrastructure, mapped through participation and 3D virtual landscapes. And the aims are to increase knowledge about how we can use 3D landscape platforms with people to collect data, place-based data, how these modern mapping technologies actually work, what kind of advantages or disadvantages they have, and then evaluate their potential for land use planning for more sustainable cities. And in this project, we have different case studies ongoing currently, and I work with wonderful people, with a couple of postdocs, Salla, Kamiar, Topi, and then PhD students, Johanna and a researcher, Vesa. And today I focus on speaking about one specific case in the city of Turku, where I come from, and we aim to use this kind of a 3D virtual landscape or platform for participation and opinion collection in a place-based way. So we aim to do this mapping of place-based perceptions in a 3D environment. And this was linked to a real urban planning problem, so to say, or challenge. It was a pilot study done in collaboration with us researchers, the city of Turku, and then 2 companies, Maptioner and Sova 3D. And as Anna also highlighted in the Swiss case, that the businesses have had actually quite an important role in developing the digitalization technologies or taking steps toward the digitalization of planning. So in this case as well, these companies have actually been the ones who initiated this whole process and contacted us researchers that would you like to be involved? We would like to test integration of the technologies that our companies have been developing. And we of course said that yes, we are very much interested in this. And then we developed this pilot case with the city of Turku. We chose this area to be one block in the city called Aninkainen. There is a concert hall here, which is the functionalities of the concert hall are moving to another place. So a new concert hall is going to be built. So this area will have some opportunities for future. So that was the question setting about. And technically, it was integration of a Maptionnaire platform, which is a map-based survey platform used quite a lot for participatory mapping. 1/3 of municipalities in Finland actually use this platform, which is a research-based innovation and spin-off, and it has been used in many countries across the world as well. And then the other technology was from the Sova 3D company, so their product S3D, which includes what you see here in this figure now, the 3D city model and laser scanning and oblique area photograph data and trees as point clouds and coming through these service interfaces, WMS and WFS. And it was browser-based, so that allowed integration with this Maptionnaire platform, which was also browser-based. And then we developed a survey, and the features for the respondent of this survey are listed here, and they could read information about the history with some photographs in relation to this area, as you can see here. And then they had 3 different tasks that were actually related to this 3D landscape. So they could take a predetermined fly around this block, so without just moving yourself, but just like click one button and then you fly around it. Then the second place-based task was to navigate and click on these information boxes. So move in this landscape and then click these information buttons to see what comes here in what are the descriptions of the buildings and so on. And then the third place-based task was to actually put place markers in this view to see to input your own ideas for future. And you can also see a draft of the new buildings that were planned in this area here. And then they could, of course, also describe their ideas in own words without any interaction with this interface. And the main place-based task was this mapping activity. We were asking the respondents that what could be here in the future. And I'm very sorry that this is all in Finnish. We only had a Finnish translation of this pilot study. So they could place in their new services, cultural or artistic events, greenness to the city, new housing solutions, accessibility, hobby or exercise solution possibilities, workspace, and then other ideas. And we had, in a short time, last April, 135 respondents, making actually almost more than 350 place markers in this view. And this yielded some interesting data, of course. Here is one example. I don't go into the data in detail because it's maybe not that interesting, but I move next to the user feedback then. But here is example of the green to the city. 1/4 of the place markings were related to this. So here you can see the concert hall and then markings made by the people and what they wrote in relation to each marking. And we made a content analysis of these responses, and mostly they related to having a park or square in the middle of the block and more vegetation and green on the buildings. And yeah, indeed, most of the markings are here in the inner side of the block, which actually, as you can see, is a parking lot currently. So no, it's not a surprise that more greenness is indeed wanted to be seen in that area. But then about the user experiences. So those who actually completed this entire survey used mainly a proper desktop computer. And the majority, 80% of those who were using a tablet or a computer with a small screen did not finish. And the reasons for this, actually it should say here that they used a mobile phone, a smartphone. So the majority of those did not finish. And the reasons for this were that the screens on smartphones are quite small and they limit the functionalities in these kind of complex tasks. And so the challenges are quite technical. And the reality is that in this kind of citizen participation, when a survey link is distributed openly to different types of media, to the municipality channels, for example, the majority of people will use their smartphone to respond to this type of a survey. So it was, of course, unfortunate, but not unexpected that these kind of technical challenges appeared. But in this pilot, of course, we wanted to learn about how severe this type of challenges actually are. But then we were also thinking that maybe this can also reflect that people who use mobile devices have possibly also less time to focus to taking part in a survey. So you might be seeing something in a Facebook feed of a municipality and then you click, okay, looks interesting, but then you don't have time to really focus in doing such a survey. Then when we looked at the user feedback, which was asked at the end of the service when they had finished all the tasks, and these challenges are evident here as well. So in this question, we asked how did you experience the task to place markers in this 3D view, and in these orange bars you can see that the smartphone users actually considered that to be very difficult, or some of them could not do that at all, and only a very small fragment said that that was very easy. So they differ very much from those who used a tablet or a larger a computer with a proper screen. And then we asked also about what are the most common challenges in this survey that you filled in. And the majority said that, okay, the 3D rendering was slow and the survey actually threw me out. And this is actually indeed a challenge for our digital participatory planning practices, that our technologies are also, all this information that we collect is so detailed, there's a lot of it, and our internet is not perhaps capable of transferring all that data enough quickly. And then quite a high percentage of the people also found the place marking quite challenging, and then the actual navigation in this type of a 3D view. We speculate that those who are, for example, the younger generations who play a lot with computers, like these games, which are in 3D environment, that they probably have less difficulties in navigating in such an environment. And then there are some other challenges listed here as well. But this indicates that we should be developing the technological interfaces and how we use the 3D-based mapping and then the navigation in order to more effectively collect citizens' insights. But then there was also, of course, something positive, and despite all these difficulties, interesting was that over half of all the respondents who completed this survey, they perceived that the functionalities were very easy to use, and most of them would recommend this type of thing for digital participation in planning. So we can say that those who had the skills and who had the proper device to respond to our pilot survey, they found this experience quite positive. So I think this is something to keep in mind, of course, next to all the challenges. And then I'm slowly move to some conclusions, what we can learn for digital and smart urban planning. So we have also done other studies where we have looked at how 3D geovisualizations or 3D landscapes work in communication in urban planning. And here we have looked at the concept of sense of present, which is this IT derived terminology, which relates to how a 3D visualization is working as a medium to offer these immersive experiences. And then next to it, this concept of sense of place, which is common, for example, from geography, which refers to the meanings and affordances that we people attach to different places. And our studies show that this sense of presence delivered by this 3D geovisualization is linked to the sense of place, that these two actually work in tandem, and both of these should be delivered. So it means that the 3D visualization has to be on a good quality level, but also that it is easier for a person to use such an application if you know the place already beforehand, or you have visited it, or you have some kind of a knowledge of that place. So then it provokes more in-depth perceptions and personal knowledge in relation to that place, of course. So 3D visualizations are powerful platforms for provoking place-based values, but indeed, as our pilot case showed, these usability challenges exist, especially with smartphones in this type of a case where people are individually filling in a survey. In terms of the Green Place project, which has very much focus on the green infrastructure, I would like to see development of this presentation of vegetation in 3D. There is actually ongoing project called Finest Twins, Finnish-Estonian collaboration, where vegetation modeling is developed in 3D, and because we all know that this building and infrastructure side is the one that has been focused on for quite some time, and we have a lot of for example, for buildings, these LOD levels and so on, but similar potential would be for vegetation as well. And when we are talking about sustainability of cities, these and ecosystems in our cities, and how nature supports people's well-being in cities. So from these perspectives, the presentation of vegetation would be extremely important to bring into these type of visualizations as well. And green roof and wall development, of course, have a lot of potential for this type of 3D environments. And while these web-based solutions, digital solutions, have potential to reach a lot of people quite widely and easily, like in our case, we just distributed a link to a survey. We should still keep in mind and remember that the digital divide is very much reality in our societies, and probably, of course, varies a lot across Europe. But people have different skills, competencies, and also access to technological devices to join the digital transformation that European Union is, for example, promoting. And this means that practitioners should carefully consider what are the most appropriate tools for urban planning. And this is an important thing to keep in mind when we talk about developing digital practices for spatial planning and participation. And in this case that I showed from Turku now, unemployed and retired and minority groups were underrepresented, so we did not reach them, and this is a concern. When we interviewed the city practitioners, with whom we were collaborating. So they say that, of course, pointed out that from the participation perspective, as legislation is promoting participation and what is stated in there, they should be reaching widely different groups. And then the question comes that how to develop digital participation so that no one is actually left behind from this digital transformation. And based on our pilot study now, we could perhaps state that 3D visualizations are at best used as supportive tools in communication for urban planning, next to other different types of means for participation. But this is not a this is not a new statement. We've been working a lot with public participation GIS methods and for a long time in different contexts. And in relation to planning, it's also pointed out that as a digital method is also something that cannot replace all other methods of participation in planning, but different methods should be actually used wisely at the same, like complementing each other, because we reach different audiences with different people. But the future is such that in Turku and in many other Finnish cities, the 3D city models will be integral part of urban planning. And the planners are eagerly now wanting experiences of how that could also promote participation. So this pilot that we had gave valuable insights for the planners of how these kind of applications could be used with citizens. And one, of course, interesting point that the planners since the beginning highlighted is that these 3D visualizations gives citizens a possibility to study this planned area from different perspectives. So it gives a different type of view compared to a plan that is printed or is 2D, so is this normal type of a map of a plan. So to end, in Finland, in Turku, we are in this integration phase of digital plans, referring to Anna's presentation and moving towards the digital governance and trying to look at this loop of sensing really from this integrated perspective and try to promote that. But there are and will be challenges in relation to this, and it will be interesting to see what happens in the future. And I forgot to mention that in this paper we looked at 4 different cities as case studies. So if you have interest, you could look at that, because also Switzerland and Zurich is one of the cases that we included. So thank you very much, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. I think you can also post some link to your study in the chat. So
yes, yeah,
those
I can.
who are
yes.
interested can read it. We have, yes, thank you for giving this kind of perspective. And so we've moved from the so-called work table of planner to ordinary people. So how they take this transition towards digital plans. If there is one or 2 short questions, we can take these. Yes. And if you have any question in mind, you can also, I think, write it in the chat box so we can just answer it here as well. Oh, thank you. So it's there. I think, yes, Karri?
Microphone open. Yeah, actually, it's very interesting and good research. And I would like to move on from the small screen problem, so that it's very visible, not very visible from the mobile phone, and also the digital divide, which is a serious issue when we're speaking about disabled people and elderly, etc. So I think, one of the trickiest thing is to attract attention to this kind of projects and how to bring a wider public into the website. This means not only developers and their business partners or NIMBY people who were almost saying no. So what kind of attractions or design elements, maybe social media postings specially designed for that, you can use to bring those ordinary people in? And have you thought about that?
Yes, how to promote and make them interested. Well, we of course try to use different channels, from newspapers to social media, radio, and these kind of issues. So wide publicity is of course better. And then if we have noticed that we are missing particular groups, we might target those in particular. So, for example, immigrant women have their own organizations, associations, and in one study, for example, we addressed them specifically. So that's one way as well. But in terms of what I now showed you, this pilot from Turku is such an online individual response-based platform. But of course, these three digital tools could also be used in a more collaborative manner, and that would mean that people come together in a visualization space where things are deliberated and discussed and so on. So these kind of developments are also ongoing currently.
Yes. Okay, I think we should leave 10 minutes for a break because we need to just rise up for a moment. But thank you, Nora, for interesting presentation. And I would just ask if you are so kind and answer to the last question in the chat, so we can still
about
keep
rendering.
this discussion there.
How people understand. Well, we know that people's map reading skills in general are varying, and not everyone has even finds Google Maps easy to read. And these 3D renderings is indeed a topic as well. We haven't done research on that particularly, and I actually haven't found research on that too much. Some single case studies, but definitely this is a new something that we would really like to do in future. So, for example, in relation to this Turku case, we wanted to do a proper usability study with observation, but due to COVID that was not possible. So we just ended up putting some questions in the end of the actual survey. But these kind of more experimental trial settings would be extremely helpful to better understand this topic.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, see you in 9 minutes, and let's have a short break.
Thank you.
Thank you.